Hi, welcome back to the Roundtable. I'm your host, Steven, and welcome to part two of albums that will be celebrating their 35th anniversary in 2023. So, next up, we have Van Halen OU812. This is the second album with new lead singer at the time, Sammy Hagar, back in the chair. Four top 10 singles, including Finish What You Started. Not my favorite Van Halen album, but it's a solid album. I liked it. Black and Blue is another great song on there. It's a good album. It's not my favorite. I preferred 5150 and I prefer For Unlawful Carnal Knowledge. In my opinion, those are better albums. But this is not to take away from it. Great album. Four top 10 singles. It did well. Next up is Rod Stewart, Out of Order, released May 23rd, 1998. This is the comeback album. Rod Stewart struggled for a bit after he released his disco song If You Want My Body and You Think I'm Sexy. Like I said years ago, back in the day, a rock guy was a rock guy and you don't do disco or anything like that. So Rod Stewart was one of those casualties that, although that song did well, it did hurt his career and he did struggle for a few albums. This is the album he came back. Four top 10 singles, including Lost in You and the juggernaut hit single Forever Young. It sold over 2 million units. He had a collaborator of Andy Taylor, who was famous from Duran Duran and Power Station. And of course, Bernard Edwards from Chic was on there. I would love to see Andy Taylor. I hear right now he's not doing well, unfortunately. I hope if he does get better, I would like to see him go back with Rod Stewart and do something. I think it would be really great to see. I think they had great chemistry and wrote some really good tracks. It was a really good album. At the time, I really enjoyed that album. I go back to it every once in a blue moon. I think it's the album that turned it around for Rod Stewart, in my opinion. Joan Jett and the Blackhearts, Up Your Alley. It was Grammy nominated for Best Rock Performance by a group or band, if I remember that correctly. Peaked at number 19 on the charts. It's her highest charting album since I Love Rock and Roll. So she ended off the 90s in a high note with one of her highest debuting albums of her career. So say what you want. She did well with it. It did good. It was a hit. And a hit is a hit. Next up, Keith Richards, Talk Is Cheap. This is his debut solo album. This is when the Stones, there was bickering between him and Mick Jagger, where they want to go with the Stones. Mick Jagger wanted to sound more modern. Keith Richards like, we got to sound like the Stones. And, so there was always that battle. This is kind of Keith Richards saying, if I can make this sound good and it sells, the Stones can do it. Great album. I loved it. Don't Take It So Hard. Great song. Love it. I can still go back to this album. Great. I'm glad they reissued this and remastered it. Sounds great. Next up, Traveling Wilburys, Volume 1. This is the supergroup, I think, of supergroups. You've had Bob Dylan, Tom Petty, Roy Orbison, and Jeff Lynne. The project started off with George Harrison needing a B-side and got these guys together and they started making an album, and that album did really well. I think it sold over 3 million units. So, the proof's in the pudding. I like that album, still listen to it today. And, that's arguably, if there's a supergroup, just with those four guys alone, that is probably one of these supergroups of all time. And that's it for my list of albums, turning 35 years in 2023. Let me know if I missed something. Do you have something in your collection that's going to hit 35 and that you still go back to and you think we should discover or listen again? I'd love to hear from you. Hit the like button, subscribe. This is Steve from the Roundtable wishing you the very best in 2023.